He is worth $4.3 billion, and the woman at the pharmacy counter does not know his name. She does not know that the man standing behind her in line, the one in the faded gray Henley and the scuffed work boots, owns the building they're standing in, the distribution company that stocks the shelves, and the medical insurance company that just denied her claim. She does not know any of that. She only knows that her card is about to decline, that her son's fever has been climbing for 3 days, and that she has exactly $41 in her checking account until Friday. His name is Cade Merritt. He has been hiding for 2 years, and she is about to become the reason he stops. Before we go any further, if you have ever watched a video on this channel and felt something move inside your chest, something you could not name but could not ignore, this story is going to do that to you 10 times over. We do not make these videos for numbers. We make them because somewhere out there, someone needs to be reminded that people are still capable of extraordinary things. If you are new here, subscribe right now. Hit that bell. Share this with someone who needs it today. Drop a comment that says, "I'm here," because you, watching this, you are why this channel exists. You are the whole reason. Now, let us begin. Cade Merritt has not worn a suit in 2 years. Not since the morning he came home early from a board meeting in Singapore, walked into his own house, and found his wife of 9 years sitting at their kitchen table across from his business partner, Marcus Hale, the man who had been his best friend since they were 19 years old, holding his hand in a way that answered every question Cade had spent 6 months trying not to ask. He did not raise his voice. He did not throw anything. He stood in the doorway of his own kitchen, still holding his briefcase, and watched his wife look up at him with an expression that was not guilt. It was relief. She was relieved he had finally found out. She was tired of hiding it. And in that single moment, the worst moment of his adult life, the thing that broke Cade Merritt was not the betrayal. It was a relief on her face. It told him she had never been afraid of losing him. He had spent 9 years building something he believed was real, and she had spent at least the last 2 of them waiting for it to be over. He gave her the house. He gave her the car. He gave her a settlement that his lawyers told him was insane, and he did not argue. He took his daughter Ren, who was 6 years old and had his eyes and her mother's stubbornness, and he moved into an apartment in the city that had no marble countertops and no art on the walls. An apartment that looked like the kind of place a man rents when he is trying to remember who he was before the money told him who he was supposed to be. He still ran the company. He still made decisions that moved markets. But he did it quietly, from behind screens and proxies, and a team of people who handled his public face. He stopped attending galas. He stopped sitting for profiles. He told his PR director, a patient woman named Chandra, who had worked for him for 11 years, that he was going on an extended leave of absence from being Cade Merritt. She said very carefully, "And who are you going to be instead?" He said he was still working that out. That was 2 years ago. He has a routine now that has nothing to do with boardrooms. He wakes at 5:30 because Ren wakes at 5:30, and she is 8 years old and has not yet learned to be quiet about it. She pads into his room in her socks and climbs over him to get to the window and watches the city do its early morning thing. The delivery trucks, the dog walkers, the woman across the alley who does Tai Chi on her fire escape every single morning without exception, and she narrates everything she sees in a low-running commentary that Cade pretends to sleep through but actually memorizes. On Tuesday and Thursday mornings, he takes Ren to school, then drives himself. He has not used a driver in 14 months. To the gym on Halsted Street where nobody knows his name, where a trainer named Dom makes him do things that leave him barely able to lift his arms, and where the locker room conversations are about the Cubs and parking tickets, and not a single thing that matters to any shareholder anywhere. Then he gets coffee at a place on North Clark called Bevel, where the barista is 22 and plays math rock through the speakers, and one spent 7 minutes explaining to Cade why oat milk is not the same as being a sellout. Then he drives to whatever part of the city he feels like driving to, and he walks, and he thinks, and he tries to figure out what a man who has everything is actually missing. That is what he is doing on the morning that changes everything. He is not looking for anything. He is simply walking. He goes into the pharmacy on Milwaukee Avenue because he needs dental floss. That is the entire reason. Dental floss. He does not know that a woman named Nora Callahan is standing at the counter 3 aisles ahead of him, He does not know that she has been at that counter for 4 minutes and that the pharmacist, a young man named Brett with an unfortunate mustache, has already run her card twice. He does not know any of that yet. He finds a dental floss. He picks up a pack of the wrong kind, puts it back, finds the right kind. He walks toward the front of the store. And then he stops. He stops because of what he sees before he even reaches the counter. There's a child in the waiting area near the pharmacy window. A boy, maybe 7 years old, sitting in one of those institutional gray chairs with the chrome armrests, holding a small stuffed dinosaur against his chest with both arms, the way children hold things when they are trying to be brave. He is wearing a winter coat that is slightly too small for him, the sleeves in above his wrists, and he has a look of a child who has learned to be very still in public places. The kind of stillness that is not natural in a 7-year-old. The kind that gets learned. His eyes are bright with fever. Cade sees the child first. Then he sees the woman at the counter. She is maybe 30, 32. Brown hair pulled back in a way that started the morning neat and has since lost that argument. She is wearing scrubs under a puffy vest, which means she came here directly from somewhere, a hospital, a clinic, somewhere that requires scrubs and does not allow you to leave until your shift is over regardless of what your child's temperature is doing. She has the posture of someone who has been tired for so long it has stopped feeling like tiredness and started feeling like her actual default state. She is not panicking. That is the first thing Cade notices. She is very, very calm. Is there any way to run just the antibiotic? She says to Brett. And hold the other two? I can come back Thursday when I get paid. Brett looks pained. He is clearly a decent person doing his best inside a system that has not left him much room. I can do that, he says, but the insurance denial means the antibiotic is going to be 38 without the others. The woman closes her eyes for exactly 1 second. Then she opens them. Okay, she says. That's fine. She reaches into her bag. Cade watches her check something on her phone. Her banking app, he knows the gesture, and he watches her face do nothing. She does not let her face do anything. She pulls out her card, and she holds it out to Brett with a hand that does not shake. You've got this, buddy, she says, without turning around, to the boy in the chair. The boy nods. He presses the dinosaur harder against his chest. Brett runs the card. It declines. The woman does not make a sound. She simply reaches back into her bag, and this time she pulls out cash. A fold of bills that Cade can see from where he is standing is not a thick fold, is in fact a very thin fold, is in fact most likely everything she has on her in physical currency, and she counts out on the counter, without looking up, $38. She slides it across. Brett takes it. She turns back to her son and she smiles at him. Not a performative smile, not a reassurance smile, an actual smile, the real kind, the kind that reaches all the way, and she says, "Let's go home and make soup." The boy slides off the chair. He takes her hand. He is still holding the dinosaur. They walk past Cade. The woman does not look at him. She is not looking at anyone. She is entirely focused on the small boy at her side, on the door, on getting home. Cade stands in the aisle with his dental floss. He stands there for what is probably 15 seconds, but feels like much longer. Then he walks to the counter, and he says to Brett, very quietly, "The prescription for the woman who just left, the other 2 items she asked you to hold. What's the total?" Brett blinks. "Sir, I can't really." "I'm not asking you to give me her information," Cade says. "I'm asking you to run the other 2 prescriptions and tell me the total." Brett hesitates. Then he types, $62.40. Cade puts his card on the counter. The card is not the black card, the one that once made a hotel manager in Monaco visibly excited. It is a plain Visa debit card linked to the account he uses for his daily life. The account that has enough in it to cover this without him noticing, but not so much that it announces itself. He uses it because he made a choice 2 years ago to stop using the physical objects of his wealth as shortcuts. He uses it because he wanted to remember what it felt like to pay for things. "Hold them under her name," he says. "When she comes in, just tell her the insurance came through. A processing error. Whatever sounds true." Brett looks at him for a long moment. "Okay," he says. Cade nods. He picks up his dental floss. He pays for it separately, $2 and change, because that is the kind of detail that either matters or does not, and he has decided in this particular season of his life, to behave as though it does. He walks out of the pharmacy. He does not know her name. He does not know that he will see her again in 4 days. He does not know that she will be the first person in 2 years to make him feel like the version of himself he actually wants to be. He just walks out into the morning and stands on the sidewalk and breathes the November air and tries to explain to himself why his chest feels the way it does right now, which is the way it felt a long time ago, before any of this, when he was young and the world was still full of things that could surprise him. He cannot explain it. He starts walking. Her name is Nora Callahan, and she has been running at slightly below capacity for 3 years. Not broken, not defeated, below capacity. There is a difference, and she knows it, and it matters to her that she knows it. She is a home health aide for a company called Clearview Care, which means she spends her days in other people's apartments helping people manage the business of being alive in bodies that are no longer cooperating. She is good at her job in a specific way that people are good at jobs that require them to be genuinely present. She remembers which of her clients takes their blood pressure medication with food and which one cannot. She knows that Mr. Adebayo on the 4th floor of the Belmont building will only drink his water if it has exactly 2 ice cubes and no more, because 3 ice cubes is, in his words, showing off. She knows that Mrs. Fitzpatrick cries on Wednesdays because that was the day her husband used to bring her flowers and has not done so for 6 years because he is gone. She knows these things because she pays attention. She pays attention because she believes, in a bone-deep way she cannot fully articulate, that the attention you give people is one of the only currencies that does not lose value. Her son's name is Beckett. He is 7, and he is named after the playwright because Nora was 23 and hopeful and in love with the idea of raising a child who would find meaning in strange places. She does not regret the name. Beckett has, at 7, already demonstrated capacity for finding meaning in strange places that suggest she may have been onto something. Beckett has type 1 diabetes, diagnosed 14 months ago at 6 in a pediatric emergency room on a Tuesday night, when his blood sugar spiked to levels that made the attending physician use a voice Nora had never heard a doctor use before and hoped never to hear again. The management of Beckett's diabetes, the constant monitoring, the insulin, the nutritional vigilance, the supplies, the specialist appointments, the therapy he needs because chronic illness at 6 years old is a specific kind of hard, costs more per month than Nora makes in a month. She does not say this to people. She does not post about it. She does not frame it as struggle because framing it as struggle makes it harder to carry, and she needs it to be carryable. She has a system. She has a spreadsheet. She has a mother who lives 40 minutes away and watches Beckett 2 nights a week and does not ask for money because she knows better, and a best friend named Daria who is a nurse and who occasionally acquires, through channels Nora does not ask about, sample supplies that help close the gap. She has shifted her own food budget to the absolute floor. She has not bought herself a piece of clothing that was not from a thrift store in 16 months. She has not been on a date in 2 years. Not because she does not want to. Not because she has decided that love is not for her. She has not been on a date because the math of her life does not currently have room for the energy that dating requires, and she is not willing to give Beckett less than her full attention in order to manufacture energy she does not have. She will figure it out later. Later is a real place. She believes in later. On the Thursday after the pharmacy, she goes back for the other 2 prescriptions. Brett looks nervous when she approaches the window. He tells her there was a processing error with the insurance, that it came through, that the prescriptions are covered. Nora stares at him. She is as established, perceptive. That's not how insurance works, she says. Brett's nervous look intensifies. I know, he says. Then, after a pause, but it's taken care of, I promise. Nora stands at the counter for a moment. She thinks about this. She thinks about the processing error that is not a processing error, and the prescriptions are taken care of, and the timing of it, and she thinks about what that means. She has 2 options. She can push, which will likely embarrass whoever did this, and may result in them rescinding a kindness that her son needs. Or she can say thank you and carry it. She says thank you. She carries it, but she does not forget it. She files in the part of her mind where she keeps the things she does not yet understand. That may matter later. The second time Cade sees her, it is not at the pharmacy. It is at the park on Cortlandt Street, 3 Saturdays after the pharmacy, And he is there because Ren has a specific relationship with the climbing structure at that particular park that she describes as unfinished business. There's a route she has not yet completed, a sequence of handholds and footholds that she's been working on for 2 months with the methodical focus of a person twice her age. And today, she has announced, is the day. Cade is sitting on a bench. He is doing what fathers at parks do, which is a complex activity that involves simultaneously watching your child, drinking coffee, thinking about something completely unrelated, and maintaining the appearance of a man who is relaxed. Ren is on the climbing structure. There's another child near her, a boy Cade has not seen here before, who is watching Ren with the focused interest of a child who has identified a person doing something impressive. The boy is wearing a puffer coat. The sleeves end above his wrists. Cade looks at the coat. He looks at the boy's face. He knows that face. The woman is sitting on the bench at the other end of the climbing structure, looking at her phone with a focused expression of someone managing something, not browsing. She is wearing jeans and a dark green sweater, with a small mended patch on the left elbow, a careful, tidy mend, the kind of mend that is not an accident but a decision. Her hair is down today. Cade watches her for a moment. Then Ren does something on the climbing structure that makes the boy say, "Whoa," which makes Ren look over at him and say, "I can show you how," which is the most Ren sentence in the English language. And the two of them begin what is clearly the negotiation phase of new friendship, which in children takes approximately 90 seconds. The woman on the other bench looks up from her phone. She looks at Cade. Cade raises his coffee in a small, neutral acknowledgement. She nods. They both look at their respective children. For minutes later, Ren and the boy are engaged in a complex collaborative project that seems to involve testing every element of the climbing structure simultaneously and reporting their findings to each other. And Nora Callahan has walked over and sat down on the far end of Cade's bench because the angle is better for watching. She's going to get that route. Nora says, looking at Ren, she's already figured out the third step. Once you have the third step, the rest of it opens up. Cade looks at her. "You've watched her before?" "We come here most Saturdays. She's been working on it for a while." A pause. "Your daughter doesn't quit." "No," Cade says. "She doesn't." They watch the children in silence for a moment. "Beckett," Nora says, toward her son. Then quieter to Cade, "He's been asking to come over and try the climbing thing for a month. I kept putting it off. I'm bad at the park." "Bad at the park how?" "I sit here and I think about my to-do list. I don't know how to just..." She gestures vaguely at the air, at the concept of leisure. "Be at the park. I thought that was universal." Cade says. She glances at him sideways. "Your to-do list isn't following you right now. My to-do list, and I have an agreement." Cade says, "It doesn't come to the park. I don't burn anything down." She almost smiles. He sees it happen and then get contained. "That sounds like a productive arrangement," she says. Ren completes the route. She does not scream or pump her fist. She reaches a top handhold, pauses, looks out at whatever you can see from the top of a climbing structure in a neighborhood park, rooftops, sky, the tops of people's heads. And then she looks down at the boy below her, and she says, very evenly, "Your turn." Beckett looks up at the structure with the expression of someone accepting a large responsibility. He starts to climb. He is slower than Ren, more cautious, and at the third step, the one Nora correctly identified as a key, he stops. His hand can't find the next hold. Ren leans down from her position and points wordlessly to exactly where his hand needs to go. He finds it. He keeps climbing. When he reaches the top, he does not say anything either. He just stands there next to Ren, and they both look out at the rooftops and the sky in silence. Two small people who have just done a thing and are taking a moment to let it be true. Nora lets out a breath beside him on the bench. It is a tiny breath, almost silent, but Cade is sitting close enough to hear it, and it is the sound of a woman who has been holding something and who has just briefly put it down. Cade says nothing. The silence between them is not awkward. It is a specific kind of comfortable that happens between two people who are both, separately, in the practice of being alone in the world. "I'm Cade," he says eventually. "Nora," she says. They do not shake hands. The children are already climbing back down, and the moment has its own logic. Same time next Saturday, Ren calls down to Beckett. Beckett looks at his mother. Nora looks at Cade. Yeah, Cade says, same time. He does not tell Chandra about the woman at the park. He does not tell Dom at the gym. He does not tell his sister Lee, who calls him every Sunday and asks questions that are less questions and more precision instruments designed to locate whatever he is not saying. He keeps it to himself the way he keeps a lot of things now. Not because he is secretive, but because some things are too early and too delicate and require a certain amount of private tending before they can be exposed to other people's reactions. But he thinks about it. He thinks about the bench at the park and the way she said your daughter doesn't quit and the mended elbow of her sweater and the breath she let out when Beckett reached the top. He thinks about the fact that he paid for her son's prescriptions and she does not know it was him. He thinks about this a lot. Actually, he thinks about it in the specific guilty way you think about something you did that was genuinely well-intentioned but that has now become, through the accumulation of additional events, a piece of information that you are withholding from someone who deserves to have it. He has not lied to her. He has not told her anything false. He has simply not told her, I own this neighborhood's largest pharmacy chain. I am the person who paid for Beckett's medication. My net worth is $4.3 billion, and I am wearing these boots because I bought them at a Goodwill 2 years ago as a statement of intent about the kind of man I was trying to become. He has not told her any of this because she has not asked, because there has been no moment in which omitting it was a choice. Exactly. It simply has not come up. That is the story he tells himself. And he is self-aware enough to recognize that it is a story he is telling himself because the alternative is harder. The alternative is, you know she doesn't know. And you know that every time you see her without telling her, you are choosing the version of this where she trusts a fiction. He has been that person, the one who is not what their partner believed them to be. And he knows exactly what the receiving end of it feels like. He tells himself he will tell her. He tells himself this every time he sees her, and then he does not tell her, and the debt accumulates. There are 4 more Park Saturdays in November. On the second Saturday, it is cold enough that everyone is in coats and hats, and Wren and Beckett spend 40 minutes building a structure out of sticks that they refer collectively as the headquarters, and that Cade and Nora are not permitted to approach. He and Nora stand at a suitable distance and drink their respective coffees, and she tells him, without being asked, that she is a home health aide, and he says he does some consulting work, which is technically true in the way that saying the Pacific Ocean is a body of water is technically true, accurate, but so incomplete as to constitute its own kind of misdirection. He hates himself for it even as he says it. She does not follow up. She takes the answer at face value. And he cannot decide if that is trust or simply the manners of a person who does not ask other people for more than they offer. On the third Saturday, Beckett's blood sugar drops while they are at the park and Nora moves with a speed and completeness that is not panic. It is practice. It is drilling. It is a woman who has rehearsed this emergency so many times it has become something her body does without consulting her brain. She has glucose tablets in her left coat pocket, a monitoring kit in her bag, a snack in the right pocket of Beckett's own coat that she put there before they left the house. She has 3 backup plans, and she knows the address of the nearest urgent care clinic and the fastest route there. She handles it in 4 minutes. Beckett is fine. Cade watches all of this and says nothing, because there is nothing useful to say, and she does not need his voice right now. She needs the situation handled, and she is handling it. But after Beckett is eating the snack, and the color has returned to his face, and he and Wren are back at the headquarters with the single-mindedness of children who have already processed the interruption and moved on, Cade looks at Nora and says, "You do that like someone who has done 1,000 times." 846, she says. He stares at her. "I kept count," she says, "for the first year. I don't anymore." She looks at Beckett. It gets normal. That's the part nobody tells you. It gets normal, and that's both better and worse than you expect. He does not say anything for a moment. Then he says, "What's worse about it?" She thinks about it. "When it first happened, I was terrified, and the terror was exhausting, but it was also," she pauses, and you can see her being precise, choosing the right word. "It was also present. I was completely present. And now it's routine, and routine is better, but routine also means I can be somewhere else in my head while I'm doing it, and I'm not sure that's..." She trails off. "Not sure that's entirely healthy," he offers. "Not sure," she says, "that she deserves that. The version of me that's present versus the version of me that's on autopilot." She looks at him sideways. That probably sounds dramatic. No, Cade says. It sounds accurate. She looks at him for a moment in that direct way she has, which he has by now come to understand is her actual mode of looking at people, not assessment, not suspicion, just contact, the real kind, the kind that most people have learned to route around because it is a little too much to bear for extended periods. You have a kid, she says. You know. Yeah, he says. I know. On the fourth Saturday, Wren finishes the headquarters. She and Beckett stand back from it and look at it with the satisfaction of architects. Then Beckett says very seriously, "It needs a flag." Wren says, "Obviously." They look around the park for something that could serve as a flag. They find a candy wrapper. They are disappointed by this. Then Wren looks at Cade and says, "Dad, give me your hat." "Absolutely not," Cade says. "Dad, that's my hat. It's for the flag." He gives her the hat. Nora looks at him. "You know you're never getting that back." "She'll find something else to want in about 4 minutes," he says. They watch Wren tie the hat to the tallest stick of the headquarters with careful deliberation. "You're good with her," Nora says. Not a compliment. Exactly. More like an observation she has been sitting with for a few weeks and is now releasing. "I'm trying to be," he says. "I'm better at it than I used to be." "What changed?" He is quiet for a moment. "I stopped pretending I knew what I was doing," he says. "I just started being in the room. Actually in the room. Not..." He doesn't finish the sentence. She nods slowly. "Not elsewhere." "Not elsewhere," he agrees. The word earlier, he did not say, hangs in the space between them. He put it there. She does not pick it up, does not ask, but she registers it. He can tell from the way she looks away first. Carefully, the way you look away from something you have decided to let alone. In December, they move off the park bench. It starts because of weather. It is too cold to stand outside and drink coffee, which has been their primary activity, and Wren announces one Saturday that she's going inside and that Beckett should come too, and she takes him into the small diner on Cortlandt that Cade has been going for a year and a half and where the owner, a compact woman named Gloria, who came here from Guadalajara 27 years ago and runs the place with the calm authority of someone who has seen everything, greets Cade by his preferred order, usual, and gives Wren a hot chocolate without being asked. Nora notices the usual. She files it. They sit in a booth, the children on one side, the adults on the other. And this is different in a specific way that Cade notices and cannot stop noticing. They are sitting across from each other. There is a table between them instead of a bench's worth of parallel distance. They are in a warm room. All of these things are simple, and all of them matter. Wren and Beckett spend 15 minutes telling Gloria, who has come to join them, because this is that kind of place, about the headquarters. Gloria listens with the full investment of someone who genuinely believes that children's architecture is as worthy of attention as anything else. When Gloria goes back to the counter, the booth is quiet for a moment. "She remembered your order," Nora says. "I've been coming here a while." "How long?" "Since I moved to the neighborhood. Year and a half, maybe." She wraps her hands around her coffee mug. "Where were you before?" This is a question. He has been waiting for this question, or a version of it. And here it is. And he makes a choice. "Different part of the city," he says. "Different part of my life." She waits. "My ex-wife and I split 2 years ago," he says. "It wasn't," he stops. "It's not a story that makes me sound good." She looks at him with that direct look. "It rarely does," she says. "Does it have to?" "No," he says. "But I'd rather," he stops again. "I'd rather earn the telling of it." She considers this. "Okay," she says. And she means it. He can tell that she is genuinely okay with it, that she is not storing it as a point of tension. She has said okay, and she will let it be okay. "What about you?" he says. "Beckett's father left when Beckett was 2, she says, "before the diagnosis. I've thought about whether he would have stayed if he'd known, and I can't decide if it's better or worse that I can't answer that." "What does Beckett know?" "That his dad lives somewhere else and isn't part of our life, and that it has nothing to do with him." She says it the way you say something you have said many times, that you have polished until it is smooth. He's accepted it. He's a remarkably non-bitter child. He climbed the whole structure. Cade says, "Second time here." She smiles, actually smiles the real kind again, and says, "He climbed the whole structure." Under the table, very briefly, their feet touch. Neither of them moves away. Neither of them acknowledges it. They both look at the children, who are now explaining the entire architectural history of the headquarters to a previously uninvolved man at the counter who has made the mistake of making eye contact with Ren. Cade thinks, "I should tell her." He does not tell her. "Hey, right here, right now, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Your city, your country, your couch at midnight. We want to know. Because this channel is not one person in a room talking at a camera. It is everyone who is in this with us. And right now, hundreds of thousands of you are watching the same moment, feeling the same thing. That means something. Say where you are. We will read every single one." January is when things accelerate. He runs into her on a Wednesday, not a Saturday, not a scheduled thing, but the kind of accidental encounter that happens in a neighborhood you both inhabit, at the Jewel-Osco on North Avenue, where he is buying juice boxes for Ren's lunchbox, and she is standing in the cereal aisle with her back to him, holding 2 boxes, and looking at them with an expression of focused arithmetic. He recognizes the expression. He has seen it at the pharmacy. He stands at the end of the aisle, and he watches her put back the name brand box and take the store brand, and he stands there and feels something move through his chest that is so specifically guilt that there is no other word for it. She turns around and sees him. "Oh," she says. "Hi." "Hi," he says. They are not at the park. They are in a grocery store under fluorescent lights on a Wednesday, which is different from everything that has happened so far, and they both seem to feel the difference. "I'm getting cereal," she says, displaying the box unnecessarily. "I can see that." "What are you?" "Juice boxes." She nods. They start walking toward checkout, which means they are walking together, and neither of them has exactly decided to do this. It is just the logic of the moment. "How's Beckett?" he asks. "Good week," she says. "Numbers have been good. He had a project at school, something about habitats, and he made his dinosaur live in a tundra because apparently that is where dinosaurs that know about climate change would choose to live, in solidarity." Cade looks at her. "He's 7, she says, preempting his reaction. "I know how old he is. He's an unusual 7. He's a remarkable 7, Cade says, and he means it." She glances at him with the sideways look she has, which by now he can read. It is the look she uses when something lands on her in a way she was not expecting. At the checkout, she puts her items on the belt. The store-brand cereal, a carton of milk, a bag of apples, a box of the glucose tablets she keeps in her left pocket, and a box of crackers that she has a coupon for. She is counting. He can see her counting. He puts his juice boxes on the belt, and he says very casually to the cashier, "I got both orders." Nora turns to look at him. "You don't have to do that," she says. "I know," he says. "Cade." "Nora." She looks at him. Her expression is not grateful, and it is not offended, and it is not confused. It is something more complicated than any of those things. It is the expression of a woman who is used to managing her own weight, and who has just had someone try to take a piece of it without asking, and who has tried to determine if this is an act of care or an act of pity, because she knows what to do with care and has no patience for pity. "I need you to know it's not," he starts. "I know it's not," she says, "but I'm going to pay for my own groceries." "Okay," he says. She pays for her own groceries. They walk out together and stand on the sidewalk in the cold, and she says, "It's not that I'm not, I mean, I notice things. I notice the pharmacy." He goes very still. "Brett," she says. He is not a good liar. And insurance doesn't have processing errors that resolve in 48 hours. He says nothing. "You didn't have to do that," she says, not angry, stating a fact. "I know," he says. "I wanted to." She looks at him in the cold air, under the parking lot lights. "Why?" she says. He thinks about how to answer this. He thinks about saying, "Because I watched you count out $38 for your son, and it broke something in me. Because I have been broken for 2 years, and I did not expect a feeling of being broken by something outside myself to feel the way it does. Because you did not ask for help, and you did not want to need it, and you still needed it, and I had the ability to help, and the choice felt in the moment like something I could do without complicating anything, and I was wrong about that. He says, because I could, and because Beckett looked like he needed it. She holds his gaze for a moment. Don't do it again, she says, without asking. Okay, he says, I mean it. I know you mean it. She pulls her coat tighter against the cold. I'm going to text you about Saturday, she says, which is a new thing. They do not text each other. They have been existing in this entirely park and diner-based reality that had, until this moment, no digital component. She pulls out her phone and holds it out to him. He puts his number in. She calls it from her phone. So he has hers. They stand on the sidewalk for another moment. Thank you, she says. For then, the pharmacy. Even though I'm also telling you not to do it again. Both can be true, he says. She almost smiles. Both can be true, she agrees. She walks to her car. He walks to his. He sits in his car for a while before he starts it. He thinks, you have to tell her. He thinks, you have to tell her soon. He thinks, the longer you wait, the worse this gets. He starts the car. He drives home. There are 3 women Cade has seen since the divorce. This is not a fact he is proud of or ashamed of. It is simply a fact. He is 41 years old, and he was not prepared to be alone, and loneliness does not wait for you to be ready. The first was a woman named Petra, a gallery director. He met at a dinner his sister dragged him to 8 months after the divorce. She was sharp and interesting, and they dated for 6 weeks before she said, with the directness of someone who had done this enough times to skip the circling, I think you're still very angry. He said he was fine. She said, I don't mean about your ex-wife. I mean about yourself. He did not have an answer for that, and she was kind about it. And they did not see each other after that dinner, and he thought about what she said for 3 months. The second was a woman from his gym, a structural engineer named Vera, who was funny and decisive, and who, on their 3rd date, pulled out her phone to show him something, and he accidentally saw her screen, which was open to a search for Cade Merritt net worth. She had looked him up. She had known the whole time. He does not know why this felt like a betrayal. She had not done anything wrong. She was simply curious. She was a reasonable adult doing a reasonable thing, but it changed something. He became self-conscious in a way he had not been, and the self-consciousness became distance, and Vera, who was perceptive, felt the distance, and the whole thing dissolved in a way that was no one's fault and everybody's disappointment. The third was someone his assistant set him up with, a pediatric dentist named Claudine, and she was genuinely lovely and genuinely interested in him, and they had a perfectly pleasant dinner, and he drove home and felt nothing, and that felt like its own kind of sadness. He is not interested in Nora the way he was interested in Petra or Vera or Claudine. He is interested in Nora the way you are interested in the one person in a room who seems to actually know something, who carries their knowledge quietly without advertising it, and who will only show it to you if you ask the right question. He is interested in who she actually is. This is new. In late January, Wren meets Beckett somewhere other than the park. It happens because the school calls Cade on a Thursday afternoon. Wren has her first real panic attack in the bathroom off the gymnasium during a fire drill, a thing that the school counselor says is not uncommon in children who have experienced significant household changes and whose nervous systems are still calibrating to new arrangements. Cade leaves immediately. He goes to the school. He sits with Wren in the counselor's office while she comes back to herself. She is not a dramatic child. She does not wail. She simply sits next to him and holds his hand with both of hers, and he feels the smallness of her hands and the force in them and thinks, not for the first time, about how much strength children carry in forms that adults routinely underestimate. He texts Nora from the counselor's office because Wren has mentioned Beckett, has said his name in the context of calming down, and Cade is following the thread of whatever helps. He does explain the full situation. He just says, Wren is having a hard afternoon. Would it be okay if she and Beckett talked on the phone? Nora responds in 4 minutes. Beckett is right here. They talk for 22 minutes. Cade hears Wren's end of the conversation from across the room, which is mostly Beckett talking and Wren saying hum, and yeah, and then once laughing, a genuine surprise laugh, and the counselor across the desk quietly puts away the paperwork she had gotten out. After the call, Wren says, Beckett says fire drills are practice. He says the point is to do the drill so many times it isn't scary anymore. like checking blood sugar. Cade looks at his daughter. Beckett, he says carefully, is a smart kid. I know, Wren says, with the tone of someone stating an obvious fact. He's my best friend. Cade drives home with Wren in the back seat, watching her in the rearview mirror, thinking about a 7-year-old with diabetes who told his daughter that repetition removes fear, and about the woman who raised him to believe that, and about the fact that he's been lying to that woman by omission for 2 months, and the interest on the debt is compounding every single day. Nora calls him that evening. Is she okay? She says. She does not say hello. She's better, he says. She's asleep. Good. A pause. Beckett told her about the fire drills. Nora says, I heard. He does that, she says. He finds a framework. He finds a way to organize something so it's smaller. Is that something you taught him? She is quiet for a moment. I don't know, she says. I think he found it on his own. I think he needed it more than I ever had to need it. So he got better at it than me. Another pause. I'm sorry Wren had a hard day. Thank you for the phone call, he says. It helped more than anything else did. She's easy to love, Nora says. Your daughter. He does not respond immediately. What? She says. Nothing, he says. Just, he stops. She's very easy to love. They are quiet for a moment. It is the kind of quiet that has a question in it. Cade, she says. Yeah. Nothing. Just, she stops. Good night. Good night, Nora. He puts the phone down. He sits in the dark kitchen for a while. February. She makes him dinner. This happens because Wren mentions to Beckett that she's been having cereal for dinner some nights, which is something Cade allows on Wednesday nights. Cereal night, which Wren regards as a privilege. And Beckett mentions this to Nora, and Nora, without making a thing of it, invites them both for dinner on a Saturday after the park. Her apartment is small and exactly what he expected, and nothing like it at the same time. It is very clean. There are drawings on the refrigerator. Beckett's. He recognizes the style by now, which involves a lot of dinosaurs in geographically specific habitats, and a plant on the windowsill that looks like it is alive mostly through force of her attention. The bookshelves are full in a specific way, not decorative full, but used full, the spines varying degrees of broken and faded. There is a ceramic bowl on the counter with 3 apples in it. Cade looks at the apartment and feels something he does not fully name, which is a feeling of a life that has been arranged with real care around a real set priorities. Nora is making pasta. She has made pasta from scratch, which he learns is something her mother taught her, and which she does because it is cheaper than the fresh-packed kind at the store, and because Beckett finds the process interesting. Beckett, currently, is showing Wren his monitoring kit and explaining blood sugar numbers with the methodical excitement of someone who has turned their medical management into a body of expertise. Wren is listening with her full attention, which is the greatest gift in Wren's possession. She never does that, Cade says, watching them from across the kitchen. Listens. Like that. Like nothing else exists. Nora glances over at them, and then back at the pasta. Beckett has that effect, she says. He makes things feel important. He gets it from somewhere. She does not respond to that, which he is learning means that she has received the thing he said, but is not sure yet if she wants to do anything with it. They eat at the small table, all 4 of them, and it is the most ordinary meal Cade has had in years, which means it is also somehow the best meal he has had in years. Beckett tells him about a documentary he watched about bioluminescent fish. Wren argues, on principle but respectfully, that she would rather be a bird than a fish. Nora refills Wren's water glass without being asked. Cade passes the bread. After dinner, the children go to Beckett's room. Cade helps Nora clear the table. They stand in the small kitchen, and he washes and she dries, and neither of them says anything for a while, and the silence is the most comfortable silence he has been in since before his marriage went wrong. Nora, he says. Yeah. He puts down the pot he is washing. He turns to face her. She looks at him, and in her expression he can see that she already knows something is coming. She is perceptive. She has always been perceptive. He has been aware for some time that she's been allowing him to tell her in his own time, that she has been extending the courtesy of her patience, while also, clearly, tracking the accumulation of things unsaid. I need to tell you something, he says. She holds the dish towel. She waits. The consulting work, he says. That's not, he stops. He starts again. I own a company. Several companies. I told you consulting because it was easier and because I was afraid of what would change and because He stops again. This is the problem with confessions. He is discovering they have their own momentum, and the momentum is not always kind. The pharmacy, the building the pharmacy is in, the insurance company that denied your claim. I own those. All of them. She goes very still. He watches her face. He watches the thing that moves through it. Something swift and private. Something she does not perform, but cannot entirely contain. What do you mean you own them? Her voice is level. Merritt Holdings, he says. My full name is Cade Merritt. The last 2 years I was hiding from my own life, and I was trying to figure out who I was outside of money. And then I met you, and you didn't know who I was, and for the first time since my marriage ended, I was just a person, and Stop, she says. He stops. She sets the dish towel on the counter with a precise, controlled motion. Your insurance company, she says, deny Beckett's medication claim. Yes. And you paid for it. Yes. Without telling me. Yes. She looks at him. Her face is doing something he has not seen it do. It is not angry, not yet, or it is angry in a way that is underneath something else, something more fundamental that has to surface first before the anger can. How long have you known, she says, who you were to me? How long have you known She stops. She looks at the window. She looks back at him. I told you things. I told you about Beckett's numbers and about his father leaving and about how I tracked the drills. I told you those things to you, Cade, to the person I thought you were, and you let me tell you while you were sitting on information that changes everything about what this is. I know, he says. That's not good enough, she says. I'm not. I need you to know it's not good enough. I know, he says. I'm not asking you to. I'm not making an argument. I'm telling you because you deserve to know and because I couldn't keep. How much, she says. He looks at her. Your worth. How much? He tells her. The number lands. She does not react outwardly, but he can see the recalculation happening, the recontextualization of everything. The park bench, the diner, the grocery store, the boots, the cereal conversation, all of it. She is running it through a new framework and finding that some things that seemed one way were actually another. The pharmacy, she says. When I went back for the other prescriptions, and Brett told me about the processing error, you told him to say that. I told him to say the insurance came through. And it hadn't. No. So you made me feel like I had gotten something I was owed, she says, instead of something you were giving me. He opens his mouth. That's what it was, she says. Her voice is very quiet and very clear. Whether you meant it that way or not, that's what it was. You made me feel like the system worked, and the system didn't work. And you were the system, and you were also the person standing next to me watching me navigate the system. He does not have an answer for this because she is right. She is entirely right. I need you to leave, she says. Nora, I'm not telling you it's over, she says. I don't know if it's over. But I need you to leave my house tonight because I cannot look at you right now and she stops. She pulls in a breath. I need to be the only adult in this room for a while. He goes to Beckett's door, and he tells Wren it's time to go. Wren, who is 8 and intuitive, looks at her father's face and does not ask questions. She says goodbye to Beckett, who says, see you Saturday. And Wren says, yeah, and she takes Cade's hand and they walk out of the apartment. In the elevator, Wren says, did you mess up? Yeah, Cade says. I did. She thinks about this. Bad. Medium bad, he says. The kind you can fix. Maybe. Are you going to fix it? I'm going to try. She nods. Beckett wouldn't want us to stop coming, she says. Just so you know. I know, Bug. He told me he never had a friend who didn't think his numbers were weird, she says. I told him I don't think they're weird. He said he knows. He said that's why. Cade looks at his daughter. He does not say anything. He does not trust himself to say anything. She does not call for 3 days. He does not call her either. He gave her something and she needs time with it, and he is not. Whatever else he has been, The kind of person who pressures someone who has asked for space. He goes to the gym. He goes to Bevel. He drives around the city. He takes Ren to school and picks her up and makes her dinner, not cereal, and reads to her at bedtime and sits in the kitchen afterward and does the math of his own life in his head, which comes out to a very simple equation. He did not tell her, and he should have. And the reason he did not tell her was not discretion, it was fear, and he does not get to ask for sympathy about the consequences of his own fear. He calls Chandra on the second day. "Tell me something real," he says. She says, "You should have told her the first time you saw her twice." "I know. You knew then, too." "Yes." A pause. She sounds like someone who would have been okay with it. Chandra says, "She's not okay with the withholding." "No," Chandra says, "the withholding is the problem. The money is just the symbol of the withholding." He sits with this. "You've been punishing yourself for 2 years," Chandra says. "Playing poor, playing simple." "I wasn't playing." "You were not lying about who you are," she says, overriding him gently. "But you were performing a version of yourself that felt safer. And she deserved the full version." "The full version is complicated." "Everyone's full version is complicated," Chandra says. "That's not a reason." On the third day, Nora texts him. She says, "Can we talk?" Not on the phone. In person. Saturday. Without the kids. He says, "Yes." "Name the place." She says, "The diner." She is already there when he arrives. She is sitting in a booth. Not their usual booth, a different one. And he does not know if this is intentional, but it registers. And she has a coffee, and she does not look like someone who has spent 3 days being devastated. She looks like someone who has spent 3 days thinking very hard, which is different. He sits down. He does not speak first. He has decided he will not speak first. She wraps her hands around her mug. "I've been angry," she says. "I want to be honest about that. The specific kind of angry where you replay every conversation and find all the places where you could have known something and didn't because you didn't have the right information. That kind of angry." "Okay," he says. "The pharmacy building thing." She stops. "The pharmacy building thing is a lot. I'm still working on that one. Take all the time you need." She looks at him. "Don't manage me right now." He stops managing. "Sorry." She looks at the table for a moment. "You watched me eat cereal for dinner while you were choosing between properties," she says. "You watched me put back the name brand cereal at Jewel's and take the store brand. You knew about every single thing I was managing, and you were—" She stops. "For $0.3 billion, he says. "Yeah," she says. "For $0.3 billion. "I know," he says. "I know what that looks like from where you're sitting." "Do you?" "No," he says. "Not fully, but I'm not going to pretend I don't see it." She looks at him for a long time. "Why did you tell me?" she says. "Voluntarily. You could have just— We could have kept going, I don't know for how long, but you could have kept not telling me." "Why, then?" "Because I was standing in your kitchen," he says, "and you had made pasta from scratch and Ren was in the other room, and I thought—" He stops. "I thought about what it would mean to keep going without telling you, and I couldn't make the math work anymore. I couldn't find a version of the next 6 months where I didn't tell you that I believed in." "That's not the same as wanting to tell me," she says. "No," he says, "but it got me there." She nods slowly. "I need to tell you something back," she says. He waits. "I knew something was off," she says. "From early. I didn't know what, but I knew you were edited. You gave me the version of yourself that fit into the context, and it was real. I believe it was real, but it was selected, and I let you do it because—" She pauses. "Because I liked who you were being, and I wanted to believe that was all of it." He looks at her. "So I have my own accounting to do," she says. "I'm not coming to you from a position of perfect innocence. I chose to take you at face value because face value was good. That's on me, too." "That's not on you," he says. "You trusted someone. That's not a failure." "I know it's not a failure," she says, "but it's a thing I did, and I'm owning it." She looks at him, because that's what owning something looks like. The words land. He holds them. "So what do you want?" he says. "From here. What do you actually want?" She looks at the table, at her coffee. "I want the full version," she says. "The complicated one. If it exists, if you're willing, I want to know who you actually are. I don't want edited Cade. I want the one who had a marriage that went wrong, and who spent 2 years hiding from his own life, and who paid for a stranger's medication at a pharmacy, and then didn't know what to do with himself after. That's a lot of person, he says. I know, she says. I have a lot of room. He looks at her. He says, the marriage, the full story. Do you want? Not today, she says. But yes, eventually. There are things about my company I should have told you. About the insurance, the denial. That was a system failure on my end. I've already put someone on it. Not just for Beckett. The whole system. I know, she says. I looked you up after you left. Merit Holdings. I know what you do and I know what you built and I know, she pauses, I know it's genuinely large. Yes, I grew up without a lot of money, she says. I'm not intimidated by yours. I want you to know that. I'm not going to perform being intimidated, but I am going to need you to be honest about it from here. About all of it. Yes, he says. And I'm going to need you to understand, she stops. And here's the first place where her voice is not entirely steady. I'm going to need you to understand that I am not a project. I am not something to be helped. If this is going to be anything, it has to be equal. I cannot, she stops again. Nora, I cannot be the one you fix things for, she says. I need to be the one you're with. There is a difference. I know there's a difference, he says. I need you to demonstrate knowing it, she says. Not tell me. Show me. Okay, he says. I will. She looks at him for a moment. Then she picks up her coffee. I'm going to need some time, she says. This is a lot to reorganize. Take what you need. Beckett is going to want to see Wren on Saturday. I'll bring her to the park. I'll be there, she says. But I'm going to be thinking. I'll be there too, he says. Thinking about how to be better. Gloria comes by to refill their coffees. She looks at both of them, at the specific quality of their silence, with the eyes of a woman who has seen a lot of difficult conversations reach their particular turning points in this booth. More coffee, she says. Please, they both say. Let's talk for a moment about what is happening in that diner booth, because it is easy to watch it and see a love story, which it is, but it is also something else. It is two people who have been alone in specific and incompatible ways, finding out whether their loneliness is compatible. That is harder than falling in love. Falling in love is something the heart does by itself. This other thing, the choosing to continue in full knowledge of everything that makes it complicated, that requires something the heart cannot do alone. 6 months later. It is August, early morning. And the city is doing the thing it does in August where the heat arrives before the sun has fully committed to the day. Cade is in Nora's kitchen. This is not unusual now. He is in Nora's kitchen most mornings when Wren is not with her mother, a custody arrangement that took 8 months to negotiate into something livable, because 6 months ago Nora said she needed time to reorganize. And she took that time, and she reorganized. And then she called him and said, I'm done reorganizing. He is making coffee. He knows where the filters are. He knows that the grinder needs to be set to medium fine or the coffee comes out bitter, a calibration issue that Nora has been meaning to address for 3 months and has not addressed because addressing it costs money and the coffee still works. He has not replaced a grinder. He asked first. She said she would think about it. She is still thinking about it. He has learned to wait. Beckett is at the table with his monitoring kit, running his morning check with the practice efficiency of a 7-year-old who has been doing this for 14 months and who has, in fact, turned it into something almost meditative. He checks his numbers the way some people check the weather. As information about the current state of the system he manages thoughtfully. Wren is still asleep on the pull-out sofa in the living room. She arrived last night with a backpack and an audiobook she wanted Beckett to hear, and the specific energy of a child who is coming home to a place that is not her home, but is something like it. Beckett looks at his monitor. He looks at Cade. 114, he says. Good number. Cade says. Yeah. Beckett says. He sets the kit down. He picks up his orange juice. Then, without looking up, he says, My mom smiled when she woke up this morning, before she even looked at her phone. Cade looks at the boy at the table. Beckett is eating his breakfast. He says this the way he says most things. Simply, as information, not as a performance. Before she looked at her phone, Cade repeats. Yeah, Beckett says she usually checks her phone first, but she woke up and she just smiled. At the ceiling, Cade stands at the counter with the coffee filter in his hand. He stands there for a moment. "Beckett," he says. "Yeah. Thank you for telling me that." Beckett shrugs in the way children shrug when something is obvious. "You should know things about her," he says. "You're going to be around." This is the sentence. This is a sentence that is not in any of the books about grief or healing or starting over. The sentence that a 7-year-old says over orange juice on an August morning that takes a 41-year-old man apart completely and puts him back together in a slightly different configuration. You should know things about her. You're going to be around. Cade turns back to the counter. He puts the filter in the coffee maker. He presses the button. He makes the coffee. Nora comes into the kitchen 20 minutes later. She is in a t-shirt and shorts, her hair down, and she has a look of someone who got a good night's sleep, which is not always true of her, and which Cade has learned to recognize as a gift the morning sometimes gives her rather than something she can count on. "Coffee," he says. "Please," she says. She sits at the table next to Beckett. She puts her hand on the back of his head briefly. A touch so routine it is barely a gesture, just a physical language of proximity. "I see you, I'm here." And he leans into it briefly the way children lean into the touches they have not yet grown out of. Cade brings her the coffee. She takes it and wraps her hands around the mug and looks up at him. She smiles. Not because he did something. Not because she is performing. She just smiles the real kind. The kind that has no agenda, and he stands there in her small kitchen on a hot August morning with the coffee maker finishing its cycle and the city starting outside the window and Ren asleep on the pull-out sofa and Beckett drinking orange juice and reading about bioluminescent fish, and he thinks, this is what it feels like, not the having, not the arriving, just this specific ordinary morning in this specific ordinary kitchen with this woman who knew exactly what she was choosing when she chose to come back, who made him earn it, who never stopped being exactly who she was, not for him, not for anyone. He sits down across from her. She is reading the news on her phone. He is drinking his coffee. Under the table, their feet touch. Neither of them moves away. There is one thing she never told him until 3 months into whatever this was. She was at the pharmacy. She counted out the $38. She walked to the car. She got Beckett in his seat. She sat in the driver's seat and she held the steering wheel. And she let herself have 45 seconds, exactly 45 seconds, she counted, of feeling how heavy it was. All of it. The numbers on the monitor and the numbers in the bank account and the prescriptions she was leaving behind and the cost of the specialist appointment on Thursday and Beckett's father, who did not call on his birthday, and the exhaustion that was not a phase but the permanent condition of her life. She let herself feel all of it for 45 seconds. Then she put the car in drive. She told Cade this in February in the diner over coffee without making it significant, just telling him the way she tells him most things. Here's a fact about me, a real one. Take it or leave it. He did not say anything for a moment. Then he said, 45 seconds. 45 seconds, she said. Every time, she said. It's enough. He looked at her. You're the strongest person I know, he said. She looked back at him with that direct look. I'm not strong, she said. I'm just very consistent. Here is the question we want to leave you with tonight. And there is no clean answer. We are not going to give you one. Nora forgave him. She chose to. She knew everything, and she chose to come back on her own terms in her own time. And that choice cost her something real. Something she had to give up in herself to make it. The certainty that she would always know who she was dealing with. The belief that she was a good enough reader of people to catch what was hidden. She forgave him, and it made her smaller in that one specific way, and bigger in every other way. Here's the question. When someone deceives you with good intentions, and the good intentions are genuine and the harm they cause you is real, is forgiveness an act of strength or an act of love? And is there a version of this story where those two things are different? Tell us what you think in the comments. Tell us if you've been Nora. Tell us if you've been Cade. And tell us, what would you have done with the 45 seconds? Drop a comment that says 45 seconds. If this story reached something in you today, we read them, every single one.